In a culture that tells us we can choose motherhood or, Good Counsel knows we're meant for motherhood and. Hi, I'm Samantha Elbertson. I work on behalf of the maternity home Good Counsel. We have 4 homes in New York and New Jersey where motherhood is rescued, preserved, and celebrated every day. This is Motherhood and. Sister Benedicta and Theresa Bonopartis, I'm so excited to have you with me today. I love to spend a little time discussing all you do for women and children, and especially the walking wounded among us, those who need help and hope the most. And I'd love to get the backstory on your ministries. And I already forgot to say hi.
Hi, Samantha. It's really good to be with you. And Theresa, good to be with you too.
You guys too. It's nice to be here.
Yeah.
I was ready to jump right in. So if you guys could give a little background on the Entering Canaan retreats that you work on together, but maybe even further back, how you met and how you started working together for mothers and for post-abortive women.
Sure. Yeah. I feel like I should hand this one off to Theresa. I'm a newer.
Yeah.
But our sisters have been friends with Theresa for many years, and our start in work of healing after abortion started in our early years of our community. Before I was even thinking about being a sister, I'm young, as I said, I'm a little younger on the scene. So Theresa has more of the living memory of the history, and I have the working memory. But yeah.
Yes. So it really began. I mean, it began even before the Sisters of Life with me haunting Cardinal O'Connor to have something for people that had experienced abortion. I was, I'm post-abortive myself. I was coerced into an abortion when I was 17. And after my abortion, after abortion, nobody wants to talk about it, so I was like constantly searching for help and there was nothing out there. So anyway, by the time I did find help and I had had my healing, I just knew that there had to be a lot of other people out there suffering. So I used to write Cardinal O'Connor letters, and he used to call me his haunt. Truly, that's what he called me, because I would keep hassling him about it. And as it was, one of the original Sisters of Life, Sister Lucy Vasile, was a friend of mine. And he promised when they began the Sisters of Life that one of the apostolates would be working with people who have had abortions. So the beginnings of the ministry, which were in 1996, it's crazy, right? It's really been a long time we've been doing this. The beginnings of the ministry, it was just Mother Agnes and Sister Lucy and I. And basically, the ministry is based on my healing experience, the things that I had experienced going through healing. And so we started with the Day of Prayer and Healing, and it has many different aspects to it. There's the first weekend, which is called the Hope and Healing Weekend, which I just take different things that women struggle with in their healing, and they're addressed in different conferences throughout the weekend with talks by the women that have had abortions, and also the priest that's a spiritual director of it. And it just grew from there. Then after a while, I started thinking we should have special days, and then it turned into we should have a retreat every year to bring everybody together so that they can continue to grow in healing and and get closer to God. And so it's really, it's still developing, to tell you the truth. Like, things just keep happening little by little. God reveals himself. So I actually worked with the sisters. We worked together for 17 years. I was with them, and they do the women still around here, but there's also, like, what is there? Like, I think there's like 18 different locations across the United States now that do Entering Canaan. And it continues to grow. Today I just got something from somebody in Canada. So it continues to grow, and it's expanded in in the beginning, it was just women that we ministered to. And actually, we had a couple of men coming to the women's ministry. And then one of the priests and I were talking one day, and we just decided that the men seemed to be protecting the women more than being there for their own healing when they came to the days. And so we broke off with them and began a men's ministry, which is, I think it's like 20 years or a little bit more than 20 years old now, where we have, men running the ministry and ministering to other men. And then 15 years ago, with the friars again, I began the friars and somebody and a sibling, we began retreats for the siblings of aborted babies. So it's just kind of branched out in God's time, not ours, which is fine because that's the right time, right? And and sister I met when she over the years, different sisters have been assigned to the ministry, and it changes every so often. I don't know how long, sister, do you stay in each position there?
It varies. It varies.
Yeah.
I've been now in our Hope and Healing mission for 7 years.
Yeah.
And currently I'm kind of heading up the mission. So it's a tremendous blessing. And I'm always so humbled, I think, by both a collaboration with people like Theresa, who we have such a history with, but also all of the women that come to us, with broken hearts and come to us just with such trust. It's such a vulnerable and painful, and what they carry with such shame, but come with this trust and openness, looking for healing and looking for God, looking for some kind of relief or some kind of sense, or just even with this little germ or seed of hope that something could be different for them. And it's very humbling work, and a work in which you're seeing God work miracles in people's lives, often over years, but just to see the power of God's mercy at work in someone's life when they're open to it and desiring of it is so beautiful. And as Theresa mentioned, Cardinal O'Connor wanted this to be one of the works of our community, really from the beginning. So the Sisters of Life were founded in New York by John Cardinal O'Connor, who was then the Archbishop of New York in the year 1991. And he founded us in particular with a charism and a fourth vow to protect and enhance the sacredness of human life. And so all of our works, all of our prayer, the offering of our lives as consecrated religious, as spiritual mothers, goes toward protecting the most vulnerable and upholding the dignity of every human person. And we just recognize in our world, in our society, more and more, it's so easy to forget that fact that we are made in God's image and likeness, that each human person is made in God's image and likeness. And we see how much abortion, the tragedy of abortion, is a direct attack on that, not only for the child that is lost, but all of those involved, the mother, the woman who, it's a direct attack on her womanhood, her motherhood, the pain and that she carries from that choice in whatever circumstances it was made, and then all of the other people involved in it. And so Cardinal O'Connor would talk about how we in the pro-life movement, the Sisters of Life, those in healing after abortion ministries, and are not adversaries of the women who have had abortions, or the men that are involved, or the doctors or the nurses, that in a way they're Christ, and that we love them, and we desire them to know God's love and his mercy, and that we're actually there to welcome them and to help them pick up the pieces. He would talk about that, kind of use that language often, that that we're there to help them pick up the pieces of their broken lives when they're ready for that, and they have the grace for that. And so it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing, as I said, to be part of this ministry, but especially, I think there's a special place and role that we've had as Sisters of Life, as consecrated religious, really being there with and for the women that come to us, often so brokenhearted and burdened with shame, or burdened with unresolved grief, burdened with sometimes crippling guilt at what they've done, or sometimes ignorance and needing to peel back layers of what happened in their lives, and just to walk with them on that grace path towards God, and towards truth, and towards a deeper knowledge of themselves, and a deeper acceptance of God's mercy in their lives is beautiful and powerful. So I think, Theresa, we've like gone back and forth on this, and we've talked about it like when we actually started, but it was in, I think, the mid 90s when we first started the women's retreats with you. And as Theresa said, that's something that we still do, the one-on-one accompaniment with women who call us or come see us. And then the retreat days and the weekend retreats for women has been a beautiful part of our ministry and our charism. Now for, gosh, that makes it
close
over
to
25 years. Yeah,
yeah,
close to 30 years, close to 30 years. Yeah, and different, as Theresa said, there's been a blessing of having many sisters be a part of this work now. And so it's just an experience that we carry in our hearts to all of the different places the sisters go. And I think that's also so important in the church, is just when you've spoken to a woman and you've listened to a woman who, or a man, or a sibling who carries this pain, and either is in really the throes of the pain or has worked through healing, it totally changes your perspective on it, and how you speak about it, and how you approach the topic of abortion in general as you're speaking, or just as you're interacting with people, because there's so many people who carry this in silence, and
Yeah, and probably even more so now with all the other options of at home on your own abortions, or there's a lot of suffering in silence, not even a doctor to talk to, and it's criminal. But I love that. Oh,
no, I was just going to say also, I think Entering Canaan, it's got different facets to it. Obviously, the spiritual side, which is so important because God's the only one that can really heal, but also it brings in the psychological and emotional aspects of it too, and helping them to identify things that they need to identify within their journey in order to heal from their abortion and to understand why they're acting certain ways. And the other thing that I would say that's really important about this ministry, and that's a beautiful thing to watch, is the community that forms with the people that have participated in abortion, like to be there for one another, to help one another through, to, maybe give tips on what's helped them, because it really is something that people are going to carry until they get to heaven, because it is a trauma that they suffered in their life. And so there's a lot to be said about the community of the people that are involved in the ministry in assisting one another through the journey as well,
yeah,
knowing that
absolutely.
maybe something one of them experienced will help somebody else that's going through something that's similar than that.
Absolutely. On the community, I think you just made me think of, there's one woman who often shares her testimony when we do our day retreats, and she talks about how, intellectually she knew there were millions of other women who carried this, but she felt like she was the only person in the world who had an abortion. And so to come into the group setting that we have on the retreats and our other events, in which we get together as a community, can be totally transformative for someone who's lived with the pain of abortion and the shame of it in total isolation, and often for decades. It's not something that there's really a safe place to talk about, and to move through that journey of healing. Maybe you could talk to a family member or a priest or a friend or a good counselor if you can find one, but it's not easy to find those safe places to talk about it. And so the community and the support that the women give each other in the ministry is really indispensable. And I can see when we have women that are engaged in the community, and those that for whatever reason are not able to do that, what a difference it makes for those that come and receive this support from each other.
And also it's just important for them to have a voice, because ultimately it's their experience, and through healing, I think God gives them that voice to be able to speak out and to be, like it says in the Gospel of Life, the most eloquent defenders of human life, because no one knows more than them. People could talk about abortion and the babies, but it's not the babies to them, it's their child.
Right.
And so through their healing process, they're strengthened to be able to be that voice and to be heard, like that silent suffering that they maybe came in begin with will change to make them, through their healing process on all those different levels, spiritual, psychological, emotional, will give them the strength and the courage then to speak out about abortion, whether that's one-on-one, whether it's in a group, whether it's publicly, whatever way God is calling each person to do it. But it gives them the courage and strength because, they've come face to face with the mercy and the forgiveness of God, and they're grounded in that, and so they have the courage then to speak out to the truth to people. I mean, I don't know if you guys have saw Live Action yesterday, just put out the first of these it's a series that they're doing, and it's called Face to Face. And like the first one yesterday was like with two abortionists and two people that survived abortion, that had been aborted and survived, and they were all having a conversation together, and it was so powerful to listen to these people, involved in different ways. And I think, that's the bigger picture, is that abortion has touched everybody in this world, and some people more than others in different ways. And it was painful but beautiful to watch it, and also to see the forgiveness that was given between both of those things, the people that survived the abortion speaking to the abortionists that were there to speaking. And I think that's what needs to happen, because I think we do have a wounded world. People are lying on the ground all over the place bleeding, and I think that unfortunately we have a tendency to walk over them while we're doing everything else in the pro-life movement, instead of stopping, like the Good Samaritan, right?
Yeah, that's a great
And,
image.
yeah. And I think it's just until we start doing that, I think we're always going to have a huge problem, because millions and millions and millions and millions of people are injured. 64 million abortions in our country, and growing, right? Abortion, the rate of abortion was higher this year than it has been in years. And so it keeps growing. And until we start addressing the wound and helping people heal from the wound, that's got to be the answer, because that's the way that people come to really learn the truth.
And more than that, it's not just that there's this wound that isn't being addressed, it's being totally denied that it exists.
Right.
So there's this extra level of trauma that women face, that anybody who feels anything regarding abortion, that it's touched their lives, that if they feel any guilt or any shame or anything, they're told that that's not real. For any kind of trauma that we have, everything needs to be validated and everyone needs to be respectful, except for abortion. No trauma exists as far as our society and as far as media is concerned. So it's important. I love what Live Action does. I love having this conversation with the two of you here, because the work you're doing is exactly how God wants us to do it, right? One person, one heart at a time, one-on-one, face to face. But that is also something we need to combat in media and in society, to say, hey, it exists. What you're going through is real.
It's crazy, because now with the elections, there's so many commercials on TV, and I don't really watch a lot of TV, but if you turn it on at all, you can't get away from it. And there's this one with this woman, she must be like maybe her early 80s, she looks like to me. I mean, I don't know, I'm just guessing, but she talks about how she's obviously, they're all pro-abortion commercials. And she talks about how our freedoms, women's freedoms, are going to be taken away if Kamala Harris doesn't get in. And she talks about how her daughter and her granddaughter aren't going to be able to have the same freedom she did. And she holds up her phone with a picture of her granddaughter, who's probably about 5 years old. And I'm thinking to myself, does she even realize the irony of what she's doing, holding up this picture of her grandchild? And then I thought about, of course, because, working with siblings for so long, I thought about, I wonder how much this kid is going to suffer when she gets older and sees that she was exploited for abortion, and recognizes the loss that she has in her family. And they're all like that. They're all lies. It's like, it's just really, it's really diabolical, the stuff that's going on now, and you're seeing out there all the time. It really is.
There was another commercial I saw where it was something along the same lines, and it was a woman who, and it's been Live Action covered it, and lots of people have, but it was the woman who said, that she was raped at a young age by a family member, or maybe even her father, and that having that abortion was what she needed to escape that. But we know, especially working with mothers in good counsel homes, and you all with working with women and children and post-aborted women, we know that the opposite is true. Abortion is what keeps people in the abusive situations. It's what hides the abuse. So these commercials that are out there, it's like, so I'm going to vote, or I'm going to be encouraged by this promise, this right to abort my child, as opposed to finding solutions to uprooting this abuse, as opposed to real solutions for women, lifting them out of poverty, as opposed to real solutions and resources, plastering all over the place the resources there are for women in abusive situations, women who are pregnant and feel that it's a crisis.
And
Instead of
also,
encouraging that to really uplift women and save them, you're masking the problem and causing more trauma. And that's what's now this whole campaign for this new election is hinging upon,
yeah,
which
and
seems
also the
absurd to
fact
me.
that some of the people that go in for abortions are brought by their abusers, and nothing's ever
exactly.
done about it, and they're sent back home with them to be continually abused.
And they'll say,
And
hey,
you don't hear that in
you know,
any of these commercials, right?
that's right. And they even tell the people at the clinics who are doing it, hey, this is, you know, but that's not any of their business. They're there to just perform an abortion and move them out of the way. And so they're not helping. They're not standing in the gap and saying, okay, well, this is obviously a problem. This 12-year-old shouldn't be pregnant,
Right.
because she shouldn't be with, you know what I mean? Like this shouldn't have happened. And so now we need to address this problem, and they're letting it fall through the cracks and letting the abuse go on. And so that's the most criminal part about it. And we're being told that it's somehow a right that we need.
And the
It's
other,
all absurd.
yeah, it the whole thing is just so crazy. I mean, even with, I'm sure, sister, you've seen an increase with the chemical abortions too, people coming forward, and we went from it has to be between a woman and her doctor to being able to get abortion pills through the mail with no physical, contact
Very little
with somebody,
regulation. Yeah.
right? I mean, I've been seeing a lot more of those. I've been getting a lot more of those people that are, from the comfort of your home. You could have your abortion from the comfort of your home. But the whole thing happens, and you're seeing your dead baby, and there's never any comfort in your home anymore because that can't get erased from your mind. And we don't hear about that either. But I've gotten calls from people that have experienced that, and there's more and more of them because over 50% of abortions now are chemical abortions.
Yeah, I think people don't realize how traumatic that is. It's kind of billed as an easy, simple,
Right.
way, easier, simple, as you said, from your home. And you don't realize that your home then is going to become one of your biggest triggers and one of the places that you don't want to be because of the trauma that happened there. And as Theresa said, what you saw and experienced as during the abortion, and what's etched in your memory now of that. And it's incredibly painful and confusing. And I think, as you're saying, Theresa, we're seeing that increasingly, and it's not easier to work through the pain of that than it is to work through the pain of a chemical abortion. There's the life of the child that's lost, and my own role that I've played in it, and then the layers of complication of whatever pressures were around me that I felt forced into this situation, this choice, or backed into this as well. And just to go back, I think to what you both were saying, that there's so many hurting people out, and whether or not they recognize it, but kind of all of this being so much in the news and in the in the political dialogue right now, and on TV, on the commercials, in some ways, like the wound is denied, yet those who are carrying the wound are very aware of it, and they feel the pain of that every time the TV comes on, or you're in a conversation about politics. And just to acknowledge that for those that carry the pain of a past abortion, that are trying to move through the healing journey or haven't even yet started, that this it's a very hard climate,
It
to
really
live in.
is.
I think you've said it, Theresa, when I've talked to you, but like, these are when we go through these kinds of cycles, like we always tend to get more calls from
Mm.
women.
I had a call this last week from somebody who I did a different podcast, and I don't know how she ended up seeing this podcast. It was a little strange that she would even see it, but she had her abortion like almost 40 years ago and she hadn't told anybody. She hadn't dealt with it at all, and she ended up emailing me. And it was really actually very sad, because she's still not ready to go for help. She just like, her words to me were, I've been able to avoid and deny it for 30, however many years. It was like close to 40 years. But with all the things that are going on now and on the news and stuff, I'm not able to do that anymore.
Oh.
And yeah, she still wasn't willing, she wasn't ready to come for help. She thinks she's going to be able to, go back into that denial and whatever. And I've actually been praying a lot for her, just that somehow she'll come forward and I could send her someplace, to get some help for it. But there's millions of people like her out there, that are just sitting on their couches, many of them with no one knowing that they ever had an abortion, and just suffering through all this that's very difficult. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, personally, this is a personal thing. Like a couple of weeks ago, I don't even remember what it was, but there was all this stuff all over the place. And, I was seeing it all and then doing the ministry and whatever. And I woke up one day and I went to go do my holy hour, and I was so agitated, and I was like, what the heck is going on with me? Like, what is it that's going on? And I really recognize that for me, even it's just like these triggers, not being heard, the pain of post-abortive people being denied, like all those things. And it was like a huge trigger for me. I mean, once I recognized what it was, I was fine. But the point being that this, for people who haven't had any healing, that are responding to this, it's just a really traumatic time right now. It really is for people, and for people, I'm sure, sister, you have the same thing for people within the ministry, because I know people that I'm dealing with all the time are having a really hard time with this.
Yeah.
It's just everywhere. You can't get away from it. And the thing is, it's all lies. And I think another aspect of that too is just that, even on the other side, like you see, okay, on one side, it's so totally pro-abortion, but the other side isn't very pro-life anymore either. And so there's just the frustration with all of that too. Like nobody is speaking the truth and dealing with the truth and showing the truth. And so, ultimately, I believe that it's the people that have had the abortions themselves are the ones that are going to have to do that. Like with this face-to-face film, there's 8 in the series. I don't know what the rest of them are going to be like, but what I saw and the first one I thought was excellent. It's very difficult to watch, but I felt like it would be a very great educational tool for people to really see the truth about abortion and how it impacts people. Hopefully it'll get out there. We'll see, right?
Maybe we can talk about the retreats themselves and maybe some stories you have from working with women or siblings, and we can kind of go into the retreats that you're having and the trainings even that you've been able to do. I know you did one for Good Counsel recently. And so we can discuss some of that so that people are more aware and more equipped to understand what it is that's available. Because I think that denial that the trauma exists, and then the nowhere to turn, right? The ignorance of what resources are even available. When we have resources like this, women need to know about it. So that woman that's not ready to go in for healing, the first step is there because she knows it exists. That first step of knowing, okay, well, when I'm ready, something's there for me that seems true, that seems right, that is pulling me in that direction. And so I pray this isn't the last time you'll hear from her, Theresa. But so if you guys want to talk about what the retreats look like and the different offerings you have, so that anybody who's listening to this is able to know that it exists for them, I think that would be excellent.
I'll let Sister talk about the retreats first, but before we do that, just you mentioned the Good Counsel training. That actually wasn't an Entering Canaan training. That was just a basic training on the impact of abortion on people,
Mm,
and it was for the staff of Good Counsel, and it was really very powerful and great. And I've had emails from people on the staff who were contacting me and saying, "I never thought of this before," and how about, because we talked about the way you say things or word things and things like
mhm.
that. So those things too are very important to get out there so that people speak in a way that's inviting people back to be. You could always talk about the evil of abortion and how bad abortion is, but never without offering the mercy and the forgiveness of God. And
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
something that people need to learn, though, because they don't even realize sometimes when they're saying certain things. But
Right. If
Esther,
you
why
don't
don't you
have
talk
that.
about the retreat?
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
don't you
sure.
talk?
Well, that's a great jump off, because I feel like the first, like you said, Samantha, the first step is people even knowing that healing is possible, and that there is somewhere to go when they're ready for that. And a big step in that is overcoming whatever's holding them back in shame, and also an acknowledgement of the reality of that what happened was wrong. So those steps, and neither of those have to be full yet to make the first step, but just the first step of reaching out, and that's a huge one. And Theresa, you mentioned just prayer for that woman you were talking to, and I think as sisters, that's something like we lean into hard, is that there's spiritual realities here, and the courage it even takes somebody to get on the phone and make a phone call to Lumina, or to the Sisters of Life, to begin talking about this, or send an email or a web form. That takes a tremendous amount of courage to
Mhm.
even make that first step. So I always recognize like that even their reaching out is them responding to some grace of God in their life. So the fact I'm communicating with someone or talking with someone, even in the beginning stages, means like God is at work in their life already, even if they're not aware of it, and moving them towards healing already. And they're moving with him. And so that's a movement of grace, and it's a sacred place, and it's a beautiful thing. So as Theresa was alluding to, often we're just starting by having a conversation with them in some way. Maybe it's a back and forth on the email, or we're able to talk by phone, or even meet in person leading up to a retreat, and just seeing, learning a little bit about her story in a place that's safe and that she feels enough to share, and seeing, okay, well, how is God moving in your life and leading you, and what's going to be the best way for you to move forward in a journey of healing. And for many of them, it is to come on a retreat, and to be to receive what the retreats have to offer, and the community that opens up for them. So our first retreat that we have kind of that they would come into first would be what we call a day of prayer and healing. And these are in the Entering Canaan model that Theresa was referring to. And it's a beautiful day in which really the goal of the day is hope, that each woman that comes on the retreat would leave the day with a great hope that healing is possible for her, that God is a merciful God who loves her, and then to open up just hope and the idea and the beginnings of an acknowledgement and a relationship with her child who is living the Lord, who we entrust to God's mercy. And so the day has many beautiful aspects, but really key to them are a testimony. We always have a woman present who shares her own testimony, of the pain of her abortion experience, but also her journey of healing and the dynamics of that, how she moved through the different aspects of healing in a way that begins to help those who are there for the first time put words on their experience, and help open it up for them. We also watch a video that shares other testimonies of healing from different perspectives. As Theresa mentioned, that we do retreats for the women, and Lumina hosts retreats for the men. We found back early on in our experience, that the women and the men tend to do better separately, but the video itself actually shares the testimony of men so that they hear that perspective as well. And so that can be helpful. So even though we don't have men present on the day, they're hearing a little bit from that perspective. And then we have time for the women to share their own story from their experience. And again, for many of them, this really can be a first time, if not the first time, speaking that out loud, and certainly speaking it out loud in a group. And that's a step that again takes a lot of courage, but it can be tremendously grace-filled when she's ready for it, because again, it breaks the isolation, and her story, which never had a place, is being received by others who share a similar experience. Even if all of the exterior details of and circumstances of their story are different, there's something in the interior shared experience, like I shared before about that, our friend who says, you know, even though I knew intellectually that there were millions of other women who carry this, I really felt like I was the only woman in the world who had had an abortion, or actually two abortions. And I remember another woman saying, "Sister, it was like hearing my own story coming out of somebody else's mouth," and where she had felt so alone with her pain and the shame and the guilt before. And another beautiful thing that often happens as they share is they have such compassion for each other. And almost all of them will say, you know, that they struggle with forgiving themselves. But as they listen to the story of another woman, it's so easy for them to feel the compassion for her. And that can begin to open up, just open up that compassion for herself as well, that leads to, in God's grace and in God's time, fully accepting his forgiveness and kind of forgiving herself.
And I think, like, hearing the woman that gives her testimony that day, it does instill that hope in them. Like, this woman is what I want.
Right.
You know, this is what, when I'm hearing that, and that's what I want. And so it just kind of gives them, it gives them the hope that there can be healing.
Right.
Just their healing is possible for them.
Right. That I could be where she is.
Right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Just going back to the prayer part that I want to mention just for a second is just that just recently we've started a Zoom prayer group with people that are post-abortive, where once a week we're getting together to pray the rosary, and the intentions of the rosary are in reparation for our personal sin of abortion, but also to bring all these silent suffering in back into healing, you know. And it's been very powerful and very beautiful. I actually extended it to all the different Entering Canaan locations. So we have people from all over the country that are joining in the rosary. And it's just a really powerful thing to have, you know, these repentant sinners, you know, offering this rosary once a week up for, like I said, in reparation for their own sin, but most especially for those that are out there suffering in silence. So it's been beautiful.
Yeah. That is beautiful. And even just to bounce off that, and I didn't say it before, but it's a retreat. So like, I think it's like we recognize the grace of God and the power of God. He's the primary mover on the day. And so we have the image of the divine mercy is really, really central, and that message connected with the divine mercy image of Jesus, I trust in you. And Theresa, I know you've shared your testimony, like how powerful just that is even in your own story, just that trust in Jesus, that he's going to bring back the pieces back together, even though I don't see how it's going to happen maybe right at this moment. But and the retreat is really, and our retreats are really sacramentally based. So we always have a priest who's present on the day, which is powerful because he's representing the church and the authority of the church and the spiritual fatherhood and the welcome of the church in a way that's particular. And then he's there to offer the sacraments. So we have adoration as part of the day, confession as part of the day for those who are ready, the huge grace of receiving the sacrament of reconciliation, sometimes for the first time. Often they've already had the grace of going to confession, but sometimes the women will come because they know this is a safe place to go to confession, and they might not feel comfortable going in their parish, and so they'll wait and come when they're on retreat, and then we end the day with Mass. Theresa, were you going to say
I was just going to say, I mean, I think that was something like when we were developing the ministry, that was like so key to it. Actually, the whole name of the ministry is Entering Canaan, a sacramental journey to an inheritance of mercy. That we have the sacraments. We believe in the power of the sacraments, the power of Jesus Christ. And it's just so key to everything throughout the ministry, no matter what retreat it is or anything, that's where the focus is, while you're showing and teaching them these other things. You know, as Catholics, we believe in the power of the sacraments, right? I mean, I do, forgetting to have the sacraments.
That Jesus is the one who heals, and that his healing and his love really truly come to us through the sacraments of the church, and even helping people like make that connection too, because I know I hear so often, I'm sure you do, sister, I've confessed this 100 times and I don't feel forgiven, but helping them to connect those dots in a way of the power and the grace that's really available in the sacrament of forgiveness, with the healing journey, in which my feelings may take longer to follow, but there's a way that I can work through those, so that I come to a deeper experience of the truth of our faith, and really receive the fullness of those graces.
It's funny, this is going to go off for a couple of minutes here, but I just feel like it's a good entrance for this, that I would be interested to see what you think about this, sister. So there's been a lot of things out there lately in different ministries, post-abortion ministries. And one of the things that's out there a lot is you can't say that you don't say somebody's post-abortive. And like a lot of times they'll call it pregnancy loss, or they've experienced abortion, and most of these places where it's coming from, it's either secular or not Catholic, like whatever. But I see more and more like Catholic people going into that. And personally, I think there's such a danger in that, because it's almost like a lot of the language stuff that's going on in the world today, and how we have to say things certain ways so we don't hurt somebody, or we don't this, or we don't that. And I've actually done like a little survey with a lot of post-abortive people, and asked them if it bothers them, and they all said to me, no, why would it bother me? So it's not bothering them. But there's like this whole thing like, they're a child of God. And like, I prayed about it so much. Like, I know I'm a child of God, but I'm also post-abortive. It's something that I've done. That's all it really means, is it's after abortion. It's something that I've done in my life. And I see that a lot of times it seems like the language is taking away the sin. And I think we need to be very careful of that, because it is a sin. And they need to know the severity of the sin. And I'm not saying somebody comes in and you say, oh, you sinned, or anything like that. No, but they have to see themselves in truth. They have to see themselves in truth, and they have to see God in truth. And it's not those words that are causing the shame. It's the abortion that caused the shame. And so it's our job to help them to heal from that shame, so that words aren't going to make them a child of God or not. And it's just so, I don't know, to me, it seems like a ploy of the devil to take away the severity of the sin. And almost in time, I feel like, is it going to take away the importance of the sacrament, like it has with gay marriage, or all those other kind of things. And I just think that, like, we need to reflect the love and the mercy of God. They have to realize that their healing comes from him and what he's done for them, not from themselves. And that they need to see themselves in truth in order to have real true healing, and not to see themselves in truth and not to realize the severity of the sin, while also seeing the love and the mercy of God. I mean, they go hand in hand, there's no question about it. But if you separate those two things, they're never really going to be free from shame or guilt or anything like that, because they're depending on themselves and having
And
things
other people too. Yeah.
right, and fitting into their own agenda instead of exactly, instead of surrendering their sin and to
Yeah.
God, so that he can truly go into those wounds
Yeah.
and heal them. And is it hard? Yes. Is it painful? Yes, I'll be the first one to admit that. It's very, very painful. Is it worth it? Absolutely. And once you know that love and that mercy, he's always taking you deeper, because he wants to heal you deeper and
Yeah.
deeper and deeper. But it's so much more beautiful all the time, because it's uniting you closer and closer to
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
And anyway, sister.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a big,
Huh?
no, it's a beautiful topic. And I think what I would take away from what you're saying, Theresa, which I totally agree with, is like, we have a God of truth, you know, he's a
Exactly.
God of love and of mercy, but he's a God of truth. And he heals us in the truth with his love.
Exactly.
And so I think when we're speaking, you know, again, I'm taking a little bit of a diversion away from the retreats, but when we're speaking as sisters publicly, we tend not to use the term post-abortive. And I think it's because we're not wanting to peg somebody in a label, but also there's a need to not whitewash over the gravity of what happened, because we're not,
Yeah, I guess I get a little
not,
stuck on
yeah,
what is it about post-abortive that's
yeah,
so, it's not an identity. I mean,
yeah,
like, for the people that I know that have been through
yeah,
healing and stuff, I don't feel like it's an identity for me.
yeah,
I definitely feel like I'm a child of God.
yeah,
So who is it that's identifying with that, are the people that aren't healed.
right,
And so do we not use language, at all? Like, I don't know. I think there's a very fine line there.
yeah, I
You
can
know
see
what I
that.
mean?
Yeah,
Because yeah, because yeah, I mean, because it can't be okay, another way that I'll put it is, there's a million abortion connectors out there, and there's always going to be something
something, yeah,
to bother them and set them up. So instead of worrying about those million things that are out there, take care of what needs to be healed,
absolutely,
and,
yeah,
and so that all those millions of things
right,
won't affect them. Like,
yeah,
I guess that's what I'm saying.
right,
Instead of
and
focusing on those
trying
different,
to, you're right. And I think what I
right,
was going to say to the point, to your point too, is just the power when we're speaking about it, to speak when we're speaking truth and acknowledging the truth and the importance of doing that, and always speaking also with with the lens of mercy, and the words of mercy, and how powerful that is for people who are just look at the beginning stages, who we maybe really are being triggered, to know this is a safe place that I can go. You know,
right.
I think that's the point, is like, that not wanting to diminish or to whitewash anything, but to help them know that this is a safe place that I can go, so that the walls of shame that are up so high can start to come down, and I can begin to look at the truth of myself.
Right. It's interesting to me, that's all. I guess maybe because I've been
Yeah,
doing this work for 30 years.
yeah, yeah,
Thousands of people have come through the ministry and,
yeah,
had healing and stuff.
yeah.
And it's just recent that I've been
We
hearing that.
started doing that. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it just seems like part of the whole woke language thing to me.
Mm,
Like, I
Yes,
think, like, as far
I
as
was
just
gonna
being
ask.
very careful with the language that people, like,
Right,
even pregnancy loss. Like, it's not a
right,
pregnancy loss. You
right,
participated in the death of your child. Like, that's a big difference between a pregnancy loss and going and having
right,
an
right.
abortion.
Yeah, an
Like, there's
abortion
so
is
many
very
different
different than the,
language things that are starting to come up out there that really concern me. And in some respects, I could say, if it's not a Catholic ministry, if it's a secular ministry, or even another denomination that doesn't have the sacraments or something, I could kind of get it. But when it comes to the Catholic, I just feel like, do we or do we not believe in the power of the sacraments? And that's what we're offering, and
yeah,
we have something that other people don't have. And
right.
and and
And if
we
there's
need to be
not,
careful not to
right,
fall into their stuff. I mean, not that, for them it might be fine, but for me, I just feel like like we have to be careful, because it diminishes in a lot of ways. And I understand what you're saying. Like when you go public speaking, I don't say, "Oh, post-abortive people," when I'm giving a talk someplace. You know
Right.
what I mean? I would word it differently then too. But to be so afraid of those words are like it just seems so woke to me.
Theresa, when you said abortion connectors, can you explain what that means? Because that seems like inside language. What are abortion? Is
Sure.
that just triggers or is that
Persons, places, or things that will in the present trigger the trauma of your abortion. So maybe it's a smell, maybe it's a person, maybe it's a place, that subconsciously you might be reacting to something in the present because it's triggering part of your abortion trauma experience. And so it's very, very important for each person to learn what their abortion connectors are. Otherwise, they're going to react to different things or, whatever in the present and not understand why. And it would cause, you know, turmoil for not only for them, but for everybody that's around them as well, because people wouldn't
right?
understand what was going on. So it's part of like the healing process is really to identify what your abortion connectors are so that like just to give you an example, like for me, because I had an abortion where I was abandoned, kicked out of the house, and that was the end of it, whatever, cut off from my family. So for me, for years, like every argument was the end of a relationship, or,
Mhm.
like there was just, I would react in the present in crazy ways because
Right,
of the
right.
trauma of the abandonment I had in my past. But once I was able to recognize that and work through it, so then if things happened, I could say, wait a minute, this isn't having anything to do with what's going on right now. So it's really just, but it could be anything. It could be a smell.
Sure,
It could be a million different things.
sure, sure.
So to really walk with them through those things so that they actually, like, I give people a list of what the abortion connectors after I've worked with somebody so that they're aware of what those things are, so that when they are experiencing things in the present moment, they can recognize it as a trauma from their abortion, and it just dispels all that stuff, and they're able to talk about it and work through it and realize it doesn't have anything to do with what's going on right now.
Thank you for explaining that because that even hits home more why we need to speak in truth because
Right.
we're trying to get to the root of the problem. And like you said, the sacraments are there for people who have had abortions or are involved with abortions, but they're there for the same as anyone who's committed any sin. It's it's the
Exactly.
psychological
Yeah.
journey of helping them realize that it's going to be forgiven the same as other sins are. I mean, understanding the gravity, of course, but it is a sin, just like other people sin, and you will be forgiven. God's
Yeah.
mercy is there waiting for you. And
Yeah.
so
And
if you
sister said
don't
it.
identify in truth, in real language, because the word
Right.
post-abortive means after an abortion. So it doesn't, to me, seem offensive at all. It seems very
Yeah, yeah.
factual.
No,
To
it's
call
not it's
someone
not who you
something
are. It's
else,
not who you are as a
no.
person. But I
Post-abortion,
think
it's something
sister
that
had a
happened. Yeah.
when you were saying before, like even like with the emotions, like when you go to confession, and that's so common, that scrupulosity, feeling like you have to confess it over and over and over
Repeatedly
again, but really
confess the
getting
same
them to
sins. Yeah.
understand that, you might feel this way, but you have to claim that forgiveness from God. You went to confession, it's forgiven, period, the end. It's forgiven, it's not an issue of whether it's forgiven or not, but you might still have to work through the feelings. You might not feel like it's forgiven, but you have to claim that forgiveness. And that's just really crucial, for them to understand that.
I
Right.
think when we talk about woke language or any of it, it's just a matter of that phrase, even though it's 100% descriptive and true, it made people feel uncomfortable to say it. Maybe they're not even the people who are post-abortive, but it just felt like, you know what, I'm uncomfortable with your experience. Let me frame it in a way that makes me
Well,
feel more comfortable.
I
And I
think that we
wonder,
need to be careful too, because sometimes if we play along with that stuff, we're feeding into that shame,
correct, correct. Because it's not about
instead of helping them to work through it, we're
enabling in
validating
a
that
way.
shame for
Yeah.
them. And that's not something that we want to do, right? We don't want to
Right.
validate shame. We want them to work through it and come to the peace of Christ.
Mhm. Absolutely. Because if you whitewash or whatever we're saying, if you're glossing over it in any way, you're not getting to the root, and you're almost calling their feelings not real.
Yeah,
They're
and it doesn't mean that you're not being compassionate or merciful,
sure,
not
sure.
at all. Of course you are. You always are called to be compassionate and merciful, but there's a way to say things that, are
And
going to
it's
bring them
incredibly
to the
uncomfortable.
compassion.
And so anytime something is moderately
It's
uncomfortable,
true.
even mildly uncomfortable in secular media, in society, everybody runs from the truth and tries to make it okay, tries to sugarcoat it. And this is
Especially
And
the
now.
most
yeah, and
damaging thing.
I think that's what's so powerful. We were alluding to the power of being in community for these women, is the power of being somewhere where I can actually speak about this openly. And
Openly.
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
when I'm out in my normal circumstances, I really still continue to struggle with shame. But at least here in this setting, I can open up and look at in truth and speak about in truth and work through in truth what I've been carrying on the inside.
You're
So that
validated.
I'm validated. Exactly. I'm validated. And yeah, and that I can say here what I maybe can't say anywhere else, or to anybody else. And I know some women will say, gosh, I feel like I can really be myself here. It's not like I'm walking around with a mask that I still feel like I have to put on when I'm in other circumstances. And obviously the goal is, as someone moves through the journey of healing, that they're not wearing a mask anywhere.
Right.
But at least the first steps of like,
All in
okay,
God's time, right?
right. Yeah, but I think one other thing I didn't touch on yet, Theresa, that might be beautiful to touch on, is just the part of the retreat where we name the children and entrust them to God's mercy. So, again, like the whole goal of the day is a deeper understanding of and really receiving of God's mercy, and an opening up to that idea that they're a mother of this child, there's these children, and that we entrust them to God. John Paul II in his encyclical, The Gospel of Life, talks about that. Your children who are living in the Lord, and also these children who we can with sure hope entrust to God's mercy. And so we have a beautiful part of the Day of Prayer and Healing where we have a ceremony in which they actually entrust each of their children to God's mercy through a ceremony where they present a rose to Jesus, the image of divine mercy, and then they have the opportunity to name their child, which is incredibly powerful because they're acknowledging the reality of this person, the dignity of this person, and the loss of this person too, who's not here.
Yeah, these women are not, and anyone going through it, they're not all, it's the only time that I can think of, the only circumstance I can think of where they're also victims, right? So they're responsible for the murder of their child, but they're also, in a lot of cases, were coerced or misled or just believing something that wasn't true. It wasn't that they were angry and a crime of passion, or you know what I mean, like a murder would be. It's so confusing, and we're doing women all the harm in the world by the way we talk to them in society and media. Like it does nothing but harm, that they're the victims as well as the the abuser. It's so intense and intertwined. So that kind of closure is beautiful, and what a grace to be able to call the child, which maybe you didn't feel you even had a right to name. Now you can approach it, approach what you've done, approach how you're living, with that in mind, praying that they're in heaven, praying for you, forgiving you.
Yeah.
And desiring your healing and forgiveness, and
Yeah,
desiring you to get to heaven, and all of those things. And that's why, like before, when I had said, it's not some abstract baby to these women,
right?
It's their child,
Right.
And I think there's a lack of understanding of that in the pro-life movement, or maybe even at times a resentment of that because they participated in abortion, and then who are they to claim these children? Like, I've faced that. A matter of fact, in the past couple of weeks, I've
And I
been
think,
a lot of nice things, a lot of not nice
yeah.
Oh, wow.
being post-abortive, but I mean, I'm okay, it's fine. But it's just like there's still such a lack of understanding there, and a lot of judgment still out there, really a lot of judgment out there. And it's sad. It is really sad because I think abortion is a societal sin. It's not, obviously there's
Absolutely.
different
No
stages
one is,
of
yeah, everyone's
responsibility
culpable.
there. But
Hmm.
right, but let's face it, how many people walk by the abortion clinics every day? Nobody does anything while babies are
That's
getting
right.
apart inside. So,
That's right.
there's still a lot of education that needs to be done out there so that people understand more, exactly the dynamics. Because I mean, I personally have seen thousands and thousands and thousands of people over the past 30 years. And maybe on one hand, I could count the people that really wanted to have an abortion.
That's right.
Women don't
Right.
want to have abortions. So, I mean, and that doesn't excuse the seriousness of abortion, but it's just like there's just this misconception out there. And I think part of that is just because you have so many radicals out there now too, that, oh, my body, my choice, all this other kind of stuff. And people don't understand that that's just the rationalization and the denial and the justification that
Well,
they have to keep putting there because they don't know God. So where do they go? Because you can't look at an abortion experience if you don't have the love of God there. It's just impossible because it's too horrific. And so people that don't have that and don't understand that, of course, they're going to be radical and justifying and rationalizing and all of those other kind of things. Because what else can you do? Oh my gosh. Otherwise, you have to really
Right.
face the fact that you killed your own kid.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a complicated issue. Satan's really got his claws in it in many different ways.
yeah, and I think an interesting flip side of this is, that it it kind of places the weight of the guilt all on the woman when
Right.
after the fact, right?
Exactly.
Whereas there's a lot of other people that were part of the picture that
That's right.
bear some of the burden of the guilt, and sometimes more of the burden of the guilt,
That's
depending
right.
on the circumstances and how much pressure or coercion there was there. And so part of the healing journey is also looking at all of that in truth, and maybe working through forgiveness and being, having someone help you and walk with you through looking at those layers of the story that are complicated and as you said, Theresa, painful. And there's it's the journey of healing is a work. It's a beautiful work. It's a worthy work, but it's not an easy work. And
Uh,
and part of looking at the truth is like looking at some of those truths in the story, which when they're looked at bring freedom in the end. I can carry a lot of stuff, mucky, icky stuff around in the dark that I'm just hauling around. But as I said before, like God is a God of truth, and he doesn't, when he brings any of this to light, it's because of his love for us and because he's setting us free and wants to set us free.
you know what I think is really beautiful too, sister? Like with Entering Canaan, like, the way that came about the name, and it
Yeah.
just came in prayer one day when I was in front of the Blessed Sacrament. I couldn't even figure out, like, what does this have to do with post-abortion healing? It was so weird. And when I went home and I looked at the Bible, it was just, that's obviously the story of the journey to the promised land, right? And where they get to the promised land in the book of Joshua, which is what I had named my son before the day that he was aborted. So it was really crazy. But anyway, the point that I wanted to make here was if you look at the Israelites, some of them didn't want to go at all. Some of them set out, went a little way and stopped. Some of them set out and then turned around and went back again. And then there was some that went all the way. And it's the same. It just really strikes me that that's the way it is with healing from abortion, right, sister? Some women come and they come to one day and then they never come back again. They don't want to have anything to do with it. Others come and go further and then they get comfortable and they stop. And still others continue. We have some women that have been in the ministry for decades, and maybe they're in a good place of their own healing, but they help the other woman. So, but they're still there and they're still traveling to that deeper and deeper place of healing that God is bringing them to. So
Yeah.
it really is like, little did we know when we
Yeah.
named it that, how perfectly it really does fit the journey of healing.
Yeah.
you know, and the way that people approach it and want to deal with it. And
Yeah. And
it's really beautiful.
Yeah, how much they're ready for it at one time too.
Right.
I think that's the beautiful thing about the Entering Canaan model, and that the way that we've been able to walk in it with women is that it also provides this place for an ongoing accompaniment and ongoing support. So it's not just the day retreat. It begins with the day retreat, but then we have monthly gatherings that the women can come back to for as long as they want. And as Theresa was alluding to, you know, we just had a day of prayer and healing actually last weekend. And we'll see some of those women at our gathering in a couple of weeks, along with women who've been coming for 14 or 15 or 20 years. And the beauty of the support that they can give each other on that journey. Those who've been walking longer, kind of walking alongside those who are very new, and sharing wisdom and sharing love. And also that, you know, say a woman comes and she comes for a while and receives a lot, and then life takes her in the direction life takes her, and we don't see her for a few years, but then something happens in her life and she hits a trigger, or she hits a rough patch. She has somewhere she can come back to and continue to work and go deeper when she's ready and she needs to do that. So that's beautiful to have that kind of ongoing
because it's needed. It's really needed.
And you know, that the gatherings, and then Theresa's alluded to before, the weekend retreat that we have, and then the mercy retreat that Lumina does and we do as well, that just provides this place for ongoing support on the journey, because it's a long journey often.
It is. I love hearing both of your ministries and your story, and thinking about the work of Good Counsel. It really, when we talk about the pro-life movement, so for so long it's been focused on the babies. I mean, and the babies are victims, and we should focus on the babies. But at the same time, when we think about whose souls are being torn apart, it's the moms. It's anybody who has had a hand. It's the abortionists. It's all of that. And so the healing and the truth that is needed, really, the biggest focus needs to be on them. And then when, like, so we at Good Counsel, we started to talk about that more. We've been helping moms heal their lives so that they can help their babies since 1985. And so really our mission is to save the moms. And so to help women heal so that they can not pass this trauma on generationally, like you were saying in the live action videos, or not the live action videos, the commercials that are now on TV, where generationally the grandmother says, I want my mother or my daughter and my granddaughter to have these same options to kill their children. I mean, the healing that needs to come for her and for her daughter. I mean, you're just passing this trauma on and making it okay. Yeah. And again, glossing over her experience.
And Theresa was alluding to this, and maybe Theresa, you have more to say here, but as the woman heals, that's how the culture is going to heal.
That's right.
You know, the woman who's carrying this pain and this trauma, and really the burden of sin, if it's unconfessed and unrepented, when she heals and she receives God's grace, that ricochets into her family, into her social circle, and into the way that she's living her life and touching others, and the same for men, the same for parents, the same for siblings, and then the culture changes, and there's such a force here. And I've seen it, you know, Theresa, you alluded to miracles that you've seen, and I've seen it too in the lives of the women who've really received God's mercy deeply, the impact that they, you know, to see their families grow and change.
Theresa, you're case in point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I mean, what work you are doing, because like you said, it's the women who have had abortions and have found that healing. It's almost only them who can do this work. To really, that testimony is crucial to get inside and to open up. And
it's crazy, because when I think about it all, like, I always joke and I say that I use this all the time because it's so true. I used to be so shy that I couldn't even go and order McDonald's.
Right.
And now I speak about the worst sin of my life all over the place. It's just like the transforming grace of God. And who does he take? He takes the broken. He takes, he works through that. And it's beautiful. I mean, just like what Sister was saying, it's so beautiful to see the women that come in so totally broken and despairing, and just see how God has worked in their lives. I mean, like, I love it. Every time I think about it, like, I can think of certain people, and it's just amazing, like the transformation in them through their healing process, and my own. Like, I can't believe how good God is to me. Like, God is just so absolutely good to me.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, like in developing the ministry and stuff, and it's like Sister Lucy will say all the time, one the Sister of Life that, I knew her before there was a Sisters of Life, and she'll say all the time, like, just how, like, because she's seen like what God has done in my life, and she'll just say all the time, like, it's amazing, like, to watch what he's done. Like, even for me, it's amazing to watch what he's
Well,
done.
you see the reality of the resurrection. It's
It's
like
unbelievable.
you see, I think, being in this work, it's like you're like the front seat of seeing the Paschal mystery personally lived out in somebody's life, because they come in, at the foot of the cross or on the cross, and you see what the
And
power of God's love does in bringing them really into a new life.
And for me, there was nothing out there when I was going through my healing.
Right.
There was really nothing out there. And that's why I used to haunt Cardinal O'Connor all the time, because I used to say, I know I'm not the only one. There's got to be more. There's got to be more. You got to do something. You got to be more. He used to say to me, "Oh, I promise you, when we start the Sisters of Life, I promise you, this is going to the apostle."
I'm so glad he made good on that promise, Theresa.
No, me too. He knows I wouldn't have left him alone. I laugh all the time because I said, he says I haunted him. Then after he died, I haunted him even more because he couldn't get away from me. But, but seriously, like, it's just amazing to see how God works, and it's just so beautiful. Even the fact that it would happen, that Cardinal O'Connor was open to this, and Sister Lucy was a friend of mine, and just how he brought it all together to be able to bring it into fruition, and that there's so many places across the country doing it now, and helping women and men and siblings, and it's just such a beautiful thing to know, because, like I said, like, I could sit here and cry when I think about you know just the devastation out there, and because I know what that suffering is. Like, even now I'm getting tears in my eyes. I know what it is. I know what that people that are sitting there alone in that, because, like I said, there was nothing out there for me. Nothing. It took forever for me to be able to find. And what I was going to say is, Sister Lucy would always say, well, it had to be like that because God wanted to make sure that you knew it was him. Only
That's
him.
right. I was just going to say,
That's what
God
the
was there for you.
divine mercy, he worked in that
That's
way.
right.
I mean, eventually, there was a priest and a therapist that I met that obviously helped me, through it. But a lot of it was just, developing that relationship with God and learning through different people that he sent me in my life. There was really nothing else there. And, but then he used the experience, to help this get going. And it's just been so beautiful to just see it spread all over the world, and spread. And the sisters obviously have a unique, where they're able to get it out so much because of, their community and being out there like that. And just to let people know about that mercy, and to pull them in and let them know they don't have to live in that for the rest of their lives, that he's waiting for them. He desires to heal them. He wants to heal them. Their children desire their healing. Their children desire, to be with them in heaven, and to really help them to internalize that and come to know that in their lives is just so beautiful. And yeah, I'm really blessed because I could say that because I know it to be true because I've experienced it. The grace, the beautiful grace, that he gives. And that's there for anyone that wants it. He didn't look down and say, "Oh, there she is. I'm going to give it to her." It's there for anyone. And it's just so beautiful.
one thing that we didn't touch on, and maybe it's a whole nother podcast talk, a whole nother episode, but I know that you work, is it with Father Mark Marius, who, is that correct? Who does the training for priests?
Oh, you're
Father
talking to me?
Scott.
Oh, no, that's Father Marius, and I do a
Father
training
Marius.
for
Oh, who am I
priests.
thinking?
Yes, yes.
I just made up a
was like,
name.
okay, wait.
I made up a
Father
name.
Mark Marius, I never work with him. Father
Sorry.
Marius
No,
Koch and I years ago began,
Marius, that's right.
we developed a training for priests, yeah, which has been really good. We've gone to many dioceses throughout the country, where the bishop has asked us to come, and we've had like it's like a 3-hour training, which we really took a long time to develop, but we've really honed in. And obviously it's wonderful because there's a priest doing it with me, and
Right, right.
it's been over and over and over again. The experience that we've had with that has been, at the end of the day, priests coming up and just saying, like, they maybe were afraid to talk about it before. And once they're given the tools and learn how to talk about it and learn what to do in the sacrament of reconciliation and homilies and all that other kind of stuff, without fail, they all say, it was just an amazing thing for them. And it's funny because like it really, like, a lot of them don't talk about it because they just don't know how to talk about it. They're afraid they're going to offend
The
people or
priests,
whatever.
right.
I just had
Yeah.
this circumstance once. I just think this is a funny story. So I had this circumstance once where a woman came to me and she's like, "Oh my gosh, the priest." I went to this church and the priest talked about abortion and he talked about post-abortion. It was so beautiful. I couldn't believe it, whatever. And so I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to call this priest and tell him how this woman came in and how excited she was, because people are always criticizing them and don't give them credit for all the good things they do. And I called him up and it was really funny because we're talking and he said, "Well, I think you better thank yourself instead of me because I came to one of your trainings." So it was just
Ah,
so
I love that. Yeah.
beautiful that
I remember
God
that
was just
story.
kind of showing Father Marius and I, that it
Yeah.
really was working, that people, once they were given the tools, were more open to speaking about it because they didn't feel like, because they have a fear that they're going to say something to hurt people in the pews. When the
Right.
truth is that the people that are post-abortive in the pews are dying to hear a word
To hear
of
it. Yeah.
forgiveness and hope and healing. So it's just a matter of teaching them, the ways to do that. And it's been very beautiful with Father Marius. Yes, it's been very, very beautiful. He's a gentle, wonderful, holy priest, and he definitely has a way with presenting it to
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
which is really beautiful.
Yeah. And our priests they're such a gift to us when they have that knowledge and feel like
Yes.
they can do it, because I know that we've seen, we don't do the trainings quite with the intentionality Teresa's that you're doing, but every once in a while they come across our plates to form priests in different ways in this. But that we've seen when there's a priest in a parish who knows how to speak about this and does it well, the women from his parish come.
Right.
They know where to go and they have the courage to do it and they come. And so we've seen that in a few parishes, like, oh wow, that priest is he's
Yeah, it makes a
reaching
huge
them.
difference. I
And
had
it
a
makes a
priest
huge
once say to
difference.
me, I don't think I have any post-abortive people. And he was a pro-life priest. He said, "I don't think I have any post-abortive people in my parish." And I said to him, "Well, Father, I hate to clue you in, but if you don't think you have any, then you better look at how you're talking because they're there. I can promise you that." And it was so
Mm,
funny because then after, like he went back and, it's true because if you're always talking pro-life, but you don't bring up the healing aspects of it or
mm.
like it's got to be together. It's always got to be together. The evil of abortion, the great mercy and love and forgiveness of God. There always is forgiveness.
That's right. Yeah, my parish priest does always put them hand in hand. But I also wonder, like, has he ever had this sort of a formation? Has he ever had
Where are you? Maybe we went there.
maybe
We
you
went
went
all over the country, seriously.
we're in the Diocese of Charleston. So
Really.
yeah, I don't know, but I mean, certain priests do obviously know about it and know of God's mercy. And so they're able to talk about it in
I'm
that
kidding.
way without being uncomfortable. But I thought like, oh, maybe I should get Theresa to come down to South Carolina.
It really
It
is
could only be
wonderful.
beneficial. I really think, when we talk about getting the word out there so that women know that they have resources for all the things that befall them, or they get themselves into, it's so important to hear it in the pews. If you are,
And this is a
if you're
critical
missing the
thing.
people who are actually in the pews, then you're not going to reach the people who aren't even in the pews. Like you, like you were saying, what that one person who finds healing is a beacon for others. That's the witness. That's the one heart, one mind at a time. And that's the game that God invites us to play, right? Our side of this and our role in this is to convert people and evangelize through this healing. And so the idea that having priests who can passionately and compassionately speak about this is vital. It's vital.
A lot of lost souls out there, a lot of souls separated from God, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
important.
And you're alluding to a lot of people just even in the pews who are still living with a lot of pain and shame.
For sure.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
when you
For
look at the
sure.
uptick of therapy, or, even now there's that online counseling where you can just text a therapist, and all these ways that it's becoming more commonplace for psychiatric or psychological help, that mental health is such an issue, such a pervasive issue. But we in the Catholic Church know where the healing is, and our priests should be equipped on some level to help us in that sacrament, help us lead us to that sacrament. And so the idea that you are also offering these retreats and trainings for priests and others that would just give them the tools that they might not already have is, I think it's probably just as powerful, so that they can be you for the women, like you said, like it.
And for sure, some women do need therapy. You know, there's a lot of times I
Of
send
course.
therapy when they come to the retreats and stuff too. But we always need to be careful that therapy doesn't replace the sacraments. And the other thing
Right.
is, like, some places like do therapy. Like I always say, Entering Canaan isn't therapy, it's a ministry. It's a
Right.
ministry of the church. It's bringing people back to the sacraments and to God. And while there's a psychological component, it's not a therapy session. And I think it's important to recognize that too. Like there's a difference between the two. They can go side by side and they work very well. Like there's people that come to the ministry that also go to therapy. It's wonderful,
Oh,
but
of course. I mean, the healing
yeah,
has to happen on all the levels. God
right,
created all
right,
of those levels of us. And so like that has to all be addressed.
right.
But I think just being able to address them as, as the church, and not leave anybody hanging out there
Right.
wondering where to go. I think that's our role.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. The sacraments. For sure.
Is there anything else that you ladies, either of you, would like to talk about that's upcoming? Is there any new challenges that you're finding, especially post-Roe, or like we discussed in the beginning of the talk about, the political environment and election year? It always brings up more triggers. So you see an increase there. Are there any other things that you're finding recently that have been new challenges in your work?
I mean, I think it's just the challenges of people seeing all this stuff. I mean, it's like, I say that, if you're post-abortive, it's like walking through the minefield right now,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is challenging for a lot of people. So I guess I would just say prayer, prayer, and more prayer. I mean, that's what, and the things that we're already doing. All we could do is keep inviting people in, keep building the community so that they're there for each other and they don't feel alone, and I don't know, in the end, what I always say to the women is keep your eyes on Jesus. Don't
That's
let
right.
yourself get so distracted by all these other things. Keep your eyes on him. And that's where you got to keep your eyes. Otherwise, you're never going to make it, through all of this stuff. So, just an encouragement for that. I don't know, sister, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what's just coming to me off the top of my head is that there's a way in which we're living in a time that's actually exciting because, Theresa, you were alluding to, so many years ago, there was so little. But there are things, there are many, there are beautiful ministries now, Entering Canaan and what we offer, but and just other beautiful ministries in general in the church that touch on healing in general.
Mhm.
But and that these kinds of things are so much easier to find now. I think that's something that we've seen, you know, in the more recent years is, you know, we have people reaching out to us from all over the world because they can find us, you know, and so obviously
wow.
like an accompaniment relationship with someone who's in South Africa looks very different from someone who's like down the street from us in Yonkers, but that someone anywhere in the world can encounter, we find a word of hope, that healing is possible. I think that's exciting. And I was thinking just, you know, we live in an increasingly secular society where people know God less and less, yet how much more powerful the message of the gospel is when it's really received, you know. So there's challenges, but I think there's so much hope as well because of the beauty of what God gives us, and the beauty of what he what he wants to give us, and what he wants to give,
and to see it growing in different
to see it growing. I mean, that's what
I
I was like, I was gonna say,
like I have somebody
there's
in
so many
Ireland.
people, the challenge is there's so many people out there, and yet that's something exciting as well, because God knows that, and it's not outside of his providence and his plan.
And our job is just to keep it Catholic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, but seriously,
Yeah.
I feel like that, to make sure you don't get sucked into the secularism, that you bring them in instead of them taking
Absolutely.
you out. Right?
Absolutely.
That's what.
Yeah, what I was saying, that's the power of the gospel, you know. It's like
Yeah.
society is increasingly secular, but how much more eloquent the gospel is when, the power of it is evident.
Yeah, it's very beautiful to watch what he's doing. And for me, like, you know, like knowing that there was nothing there for me, and just like you said, sister, seeing all these, it's seeing it grow and seeing it really get out there, and seeing, you know, people get healed, and you know it's going to grow and grow and grow. I
Yeah,
see
that's not to say that we don't need a lot more, because
it's
there's
beautiful.
always a need, but just that there's so much more, and it's so much more accessible now than it was
Right.
in
Yeah,
previous
it's
decades.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, and sooner to people, you know. I think that's something so many people that are in healing after abortion ministry say is, you know, like women are reaching out so much sooner, which
Right.
is heartbreaking in its own way. And the dynamic of a healing journey is very different for someone who has very recently experienced their abortion, which again is probably a whole nother podcast, so not to get into it too deeply. But the fact that somebody maybe can reach out and begin a journey with God very soon, versus living in decades of unhealthy denial and coping mechanisms, and even patterns of sin that have a lot of damage on themselves and other people, you know, to like make an about face turn to God, you know, sooner.
And then there's always the balance, though, too, between, you know, like, yeah, and this is where the importance of them knowing the seriousness of the sin, because you don't want them to think, oh, they could just come to confession and be okay and go out and do it again and have another abortion, you know, like, so it's a balance. Everything is balanced by the grace of God, right?
How often are you running these retreats? Are they on a need basis? Like you get a group of people who are saying we need this, and so it's time to have a retreat, or are they annual, or is it something that obviously you can we'll put the website and for both of your ministries and the Entering Canaan retreats in the description here, but are there things people can sign up for, alerts or an email, I don't know, list to get on?
The Entering Canaan site has a thing where they could register. It's just enteringcanaan.com. There's a thing there that would show it, and actually there's a section on there that has all the retreats.
Right.
You
so
know,
you have like the dates for all of the ministries.
All of the retreats around the country.
Those that run the Entering Canaan ministry around the country.
Exactly.
The dates are listed on your the Entering Canaan website.
Right.
Yeah. And we also
and how often are they?
It depends on the ministry, right? So if you know, for example, the Albany Diocese runs it out of their Project Rachel office, and they would have it whatever frequency they're able to hold it in that area. The Sisters of Life, we do our Day of Prayer and Healing retreat about 5 or 6 times a year, so it falls about every other month or so. And we do
the abortion capital of the world,
New York.
right?
Yeah, so we do 5 or 6 in English and 3 in Spanish in the course of a year of the day retreat. And then that's kind of the gateway into coming to the other events. So the weekend retreats are with less frequency, but they kind of pool in the people who've come to a day of prayer and healing more recently.
So then like I said, we'll
men's
have
are like twice a
yeah.
year. The
Yeah,
men's
are twice
days,
a year.
the men's retreats are twice a year, and the siblings, unfortunately, are only once a year. But they do keep
Okay.
in touch with each other, like we have a thing
They
online.
do.
But it's,
Oh, wow.
yeah. I don't really do the women. Well, I do a mercy retreat every year, and I also go to like different dioceses and help them to do stuff. So that's pretty much what I'm doing with the women, because the sisters are doing the women here, so if somebody calls me from here, I send them her way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and you're playing such a supportive role, for others to understand how to run this, and that's how you grow. And so that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. So if anybody is hearing this and needing this or interested in this or knows of somebody who might be interested in this, you can find out and register for an event, an Entering Canaan event in your area at the Entering Canaan. Do you have the website off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's just
To say it?
enteringcanaan.com, and under
Okay,
women, all the
enteringcanaan.com.
women's retreats around the country are listed. The men, the same thing, so I try to keep it up to date as long as they give me their information to put up there so people know where they could go.
I'd like to reiterate one thing that I heard you say, Sister, about how women, when they're healed, that's how we're going to heal the culture, right? When these mothers and they're not passing on their trauma generationally, that's how we heal the culture. And so I think it's important to note that these ministries are not always well funded, and so we could always use your support. So it's not just for people who have suffered an abortion, have had a hand in abortion, that are post-abortive to give money to and support, but it's for all of us. It's for all of us to support healing in our culture. And so this is a beautiful way, and 3 beautiful ministries. We have Sisters of Life, we have the Entering Canaan Retreats, and we have the Lumina program that Theresa Bonopartis runs under the Good Counsel organization. And so I think all of those things could use your support. And yeah, that it's a wonderful way how we heal our culture. So I think that was put beautifully. Thank you, Sister.
Yeah, and I just mention, Sam, too, that you mentioned that the Entering Canaan website is the place to find the retreats all over the country. If people are in the New York area and looking for one of the retreats with the sisters, they're also listed on our website, sistersoflife.org. And I think there's a drop-down tab for what we do, and then healing after abortion is where you would find it. And I think there's a link right on the homepage as well for healing after abortion. So that's where they can get more info about that. So yeah,
great.
Of course, on the as we said, the Entering Canaan page and the Lumina page as well.
Yeah, and I'll put all of that in the description here of the episode. So I want to thank you so much. We have been talking for a while. I want to thank you both for spending this time with me today. It is so necessary to get the word out so that more and more women know that they have support, that there is healing. And so I encourage anyone who is listening today, watching today, to speak about this with those they know and love, that there's mercy and that abortion is not something you hide with in the dark. It is something that needs to be brought to light and given to God so that he can heal and forgive. And so I thank you so much. And I'm sure we could probably do a whole nother podcast episode on any one of these topics. So if you'd ever like to come and speak with me again, I'd always love to spend time with you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Samantha.
If a woman is pregnant, she shouldn't have to worry about how she's going to carry, deliver, and care for her child. She can call Good Counsel. We need you to help spread the good news that Good Counsel's doors are open for all women, pregnant and parenting, and in need. Please join us and be an advocate for motherhood. Subscribe to our podcast, Motherhood and, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please be sure to visit Good Counsel's website for more information and to get involved at goodcounselhomes.org. We ask that you share our maternity help website, help.goodcounselhomes.org. Please share this website with others often so that it will reach more women in need. Subscribe to Good Counsel's YouTube channel for more inspiring and edifying content about maternity homes, the pro-life movement, and the life and ministry of Good Counsel's founder, Father Benedict Groeschel. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Good Counsel Homes. If you have any questions or ideas for future guests or topics, please message us on Facebook or Instagram. Remember, life is love. Talk to you soon.